If you're over 60 years old and still feel like a guest in the home your children live in, you're not just hurting yourself, but also accidentally teaching your children to take your love for granted. Have you ever walked into your child home and felt like you needed permission to exist in that space? Like your presence was a burden rather than a gift? Like they were tolerating you instead of truly welcoming you? Many people believe that parental love means always being available, always checking in, always visiting to show you care. That if you don't visit your children regularly, you'll grow apart and they'll forget about you. But today I'm going to prove the opposite. I'm going to share with you a wisdom that the smartest parents in America have applied for generations. The art of loving by giving space. This is how you not only protect your dignity, but also teach your children to value and respect you more deeply than they ever have before. There's a story I often hear from families in the Midwest about an old mother eagle who raised her young to maturity, teaching them to fly, hunt, and survive. When the eaglets became full-grown adults, instead of hovering around the old nest, the mother eagle knew when to step back to higher ground. The young eagles initially thought their mother had abandoned them, but then they realized something profound. It was precisely because she gave them space that they truly matured. And every time they soar high, they look toward that distant peak with deep gratitude. Do you recognize this pattern in your own life? When you visit your children, they greet you warmly for the first few minutes, but then the atmosphere gradually becomes stifling. They glance at the clock. They get busy with their phones. Conversations become choppy and forced. You try to find things to talk about, but the feeling that you're bothering them keeps creeping into your thoughts. I understand that pain. It's the feeling of being forgotten in your own family. You used to be the heart of this home. You used to be the one they turned to in times of trouble, the one they shared their joys and sorrows with. Now you feel like a ghost in the very house you built with your whole heart. But this isn't your children's fault. This is a natural law that we often don't understand. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." Sometimes the most profound way to love is knowing when to step back, giving others space to miss and appreciate you. I once knew a man named Frank, 68 years old, a veteran from Ohio. After his wife passed away, he tried to stay close to his two children by visiting them every Sunday after church service. He always brought homemade apple pie, was always ready to help with yard work, babysat the grandkids. But he began to notice that the more often he visited, the more weary his children seemed. They didn't dare say anything, but he could sense a reluctance in their eyes. One day, listening to a sermon about there's a time for everything from Ecclesiastes, he decided to apply this biblical wisdom, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. He stopped the weekly visits. Instead, he only called briefly to check in, sent handwritten notes on special occasions, and waited for his children to reach out first. Something miraculous happened. After 2 months, his son called and said, "Dad, we miss you. How about we start our Sunday dinners again? But this time let us cook for you." Maya Angelou once said, "When people show you who they are, believe them. If you continue trying to maintain frequent presence when your children no longer feel the need for it, you'll gradually become background furniture in their homes. Familiarity breeds contempt. They'll start taking your presence for granted, even seeing it as a burden. There's an old American saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. When you learn to love your children by giving them space to breathe, you're teaching them a valuable lesson about appreciation. You're helping them realize that parental love isn't something automatic, but a gift that needs to be cherished. Think about the redwood trees in California. Why do they live for thousands of years and grow taller than any other trees in the world? Because they know how to give each other space to thrive. The strongest trees aren't those crowded together, but those that stand with adequate distance, so their roots don't compete for nutrients, yet close enough to support each other during storms. The first solution you need to apply today is learning to read the unspoken language of your children. Instead of just listening to what they say, pay attention to what they don't say. When they invite you over but their tone lacks enthusiasm, that's when you should gracefully decline and say, "You go ahead and enjoy yourselves. I have some things I'd like to catch up on." There's another subtle sign that many parents miss. Have you noticed that your children are always busy when you're there? They always have laundry to fold, calls to return, and work to finish. But when you're not present, their lives seem more relaxed. This isn't a coincidence. This is their subconscious way of creating distance that their lips cannot express. I understand that feeling of abandonment. You spend your whole life raising them, sacrificing sleep, money, even personal dreams. Now, when you need a little attention, a little time, they seem reluctant. This doesn't mean they don't love you. It means they've gotten so accustomed to that love that they've forgotten its value. Mark Twain once said, "Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see." But he also knew that even kindness needs to be given wisely. Distance isn't abandonment. It's wisdom. It's how you teach your children that parental love is a precious gift, not an obligation. I know a man named David, 65 years old, a retired teacher from Texas. He has 2 daughters who are both married. Previously, he always showed up for every grandchild's birthday, every family gathering, every holiday celebration. He thought this was how to demonstrate his love for the family. But he began to notice that his presence was becoming automatic. His children just assumed he would be there. No one bothered to ask if he wanted to come or if he was available. One day, when his daughter called to invite him to his grandson's birthday party, instead of immediately saying yes like usual, he said, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you." It was the first time in years he hadn't automatically said yes. The result? His daughter called back 3 times that day to persuade him to attend, saying the kids would be so disappointed if Grandpa wasn't there. This is the second secret. Create valuable scarcity for your presence. This isn't mind games or emotional manipulation. This is how you teach your children that a parent's time and presence is a gift, not a given obligation. Dr. Wayne Dyer said, "How people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours." When you're always available, your presence loses its consciousness. It becomes habit, becomes scenery. But when you appear selectively, each of your appearances becomes a special event. There's a story from American folklore about a lighthouse keeper. He noticed that ships only appreciated his light during storms. When the sea was calm, they sailed by without a glance. So he decided to only light the beacon when it was truly needed. Soon, every ship captain in the area came to respect and rely on that lighthouse, knowing its light meant safety and guidance. Helen, 69 years old from Oregon, applied this wisdom elegantly. Instead of always being available to babysit whenever her children needed, she began saying, "This week I'm tied up, but let me see if next week works." Instead of calling every day to check in, she spaced out to every few days. The result? Her children began calling her more often, even asking why she seemed less available lately. But there's a trap that many parents fall into when they start practicing loving from a distance. They do it with a resentful heart, hoping their children will realize their mistake and feel guilty. This is a major mistake. If you create distance with a punitive mindset, your children will sense it and only pull away further. The right way is with positive intention. You create space to devote time to yourself, to develop personal interests, to live a meaningful life not dependent on your children. When your children see you happy, independent, and having your own interesting life, they'll naturally want to be part of those good vibes. Benjamin Franklin wrote, "When the well is dry, we know the worth of water. Love your children like water. Don't compete for attention. Don't force them to care. Simply be the nourishing source that's always there, ready when truly needed." If you continue the pattern of always being there, you'll gradually lose your individual identity. You'll become a faded version of yourself, existing only to serve your children. And ironically, this will make them respect you less, not more. The third secret is learning to say no gracefully. When your children invite you to an event where you sense your presence isn't truly wanted, say, You all have fun. I have some reading I want to catch up on. Don't over-explain. Don't act hurt. Just politely decline and show that you have your own fulfilling life. Something amazing will happen when you start applying this art. Your children will begin to notice you in new ways. They'll become curious about your life. They'll ask, "What have you been up to lately? You seem busy these days." This is when you know you've regained their respect. There was a man named Robert, 71 years old, from Michigan, who experienced this. After his wife passed away, he felt lonely and began clinging to his 2 children. He called daily, visited weekly, and was always ready to help with everything. But he noticed his children increasingly seemed tired of his presence. One day, he decided to enroll in painting classes at the local community center. He began having his own schedule. When his daughter called to invite him for dinner, sometimes he'd say, "Sweetheart, I have art class that evening. Let's plan for another time." Within 3 months, his children completely changed their attitude. They began showing interest in his paintings, even proudly showing friends their dad's new hobby. The 4th secret lies in becoming the most interesting version of yourself. Dr. Wayne Dyer said, "You cannot get what you do not have." Applied here. Make your own life fulfilling before expecting your children to find you interesting. I know a woman named Patricia, 73 years old, from Florida, who did this outstandingly. Instead of spending all day at home waiting for her children to call, she started learning yoga, joined a book club, and even learned to use social media to reconnect with old friends. When her children called, she always had interesting stories to share. Gradually, instead of her calling them, they began calling her more often to hear stories about their mother's colorful life. Here's the key point. Children don't want a parent who is heavy, sad, and only complaining about loneliness. They want a parent who is vibrant, positive, with their own exciting life. When you become that person, you're no longer a burden. You become an inspiration. There's a story from American folklore about a farmer and an apple tree. The farmer kept hugging the apple tree tightly, afraid it would be blown away by the wind. But the tree grew weaker because it wasn't free to sway with the breeze. Finally, the farmer learned to let go. The tree became free, strong, and able to bend but not break. And miraculously, it always stayed rooted close to the farmer who had planted it. If you don't change your approach, loneliness will increasingly eat away at your soul. You'll become bitter, resentful, and your relationship with your children will become toxic. They'll avoid you not because they're mean, but because the negative energy from you makes them feel drained. But when you practice the art of loving from a distance, magic happens. First, you'll rediscover yourself. You'll remember things you loved before becoming a parent. You'll have time to develop new hobbies, make friends with people on your wavelength. Your life will no longer revolve around waiting for calls from your children. Second, your children will begin to see you with fresh eyes. Instead of seeing a dependent parent, they'll see an independent, interesting person. They'll be proud of you and want to introduce you to their friends. More importantly, they'll begin seeking you out not out of obligation, but because they genuinely want to be around you. Mark Twain once said, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." Relationships need a balance between closeness and space, between caring and freedom. When you understand this, you'll no longer fear that creating distance will cause you to lose love. On the contrary, it will make that love deeper and more genuine. There's wisdom in American culture. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Instead of always being available when invited, occasionally show up when they don't expect you, but with positive energy. For example, instead of visiting your children on Sunday like routine, call on a Tuesday afternoon and say, "Honey, I just baked some cookies. Mind if I drop by for a quick visit?" This creates a positive surprise effect. Your children will feel loved unexpectedly, without pressure, without obligation. And since they're not mentally prepared to endure a long visit, they'll be genuinely happy with your appearance. I want to end this section with one final story. There was a lighthouse keeper in Maine who was asked by sailors, "Why is your light so valued?" He answered, "Because I don't shine it all the time. I only light it when ships truly need guidance." That's why every captain respects and trusts this beacon. Growing older isn't about begging for attention from your children. It's about shining with your own light. When you stop needing to be loved and start loving freely, naturally, unconditionally, you become a magnet for the most genuine affection. The art of loving from a distance isn't abandonment. It's wisdom. It's how you teach your children that parental love is a gift, not an obligation. It's how you protect your dignity while preserving family bonds. Remember, your children learn how to love and respect others through how they see you love and respect yourself. When you live a meaningful, independent, and happy life, you're showing them a model of how to age beautifully. If these words touch your heart, please leave a comment saying, "I choose to love from a distance," and share what city you're from. Let's create a community of wise parents who know how to love their children by loving themselves first. Subscribe to our channel for more lessons about the art of living beautifully in your golden years. Aging can be the most beautiful time of your life.